month and a half to go until clubs have the chance to reinforce or perhaps even correct course in the January window. But who needs to do what? Alan Pardew is with me for the next hour, as is Dharma Sheth and of course Kaveh Solokal as well. Manchester United spent big in the summer and are just a point outside the top four. Could they spend again in January to try to help secure Champions League football? Toney is attracting plenty of Premier League interest. We'll tell which clubs may make a move in January.
And I'll be taking a look at the top 16 most expensive signings of the summer and assessing who have been hits and who are yet to start firing. Alan Pardew, you best get your thinking cap on.
OK, got your thinking cap on?
Well, some of them don't take a lot of thinking.
Good answer. Right, we're going to start with Manchester United. I wonder how much pondering you'll have to do over this. Who, after very heavy investment in the summer, go into the international break 7th in the table, a point off the Champions League places. And like many, Kaveh, they did invest heavily in the summer, but it appears they might not go back into the window in January.
Look, I think the kind of players that Manchester United will be targeting are not the kind of players who would be available in January. I think they had a good summer transfer window. Ruben Amorim has got them playing. You can see the improved performances on the pitch. I know they'll be losing 3 players to the African Cup of Nations this winter, but I don't think they'll be making any panic signings. I think next summer they'll be looking at bringing in another defensive player, the kind of players they've been linked with, like Adam Wharton, Belieber as well, Anderson. Those kind of players are very difficult to sign, and if you're going to sign them, the only time you're really going to get them is in the summer. So I think it could be a quiet window for United, but there could be players leaving. For instance, somebody like Joshua Zirkzee may feel that he needs to be playing more regularly. Also, Kobbie Mainoo, you know, the World Cup is coming up next summer. He's somebody who was involved in the Euros last time round. He's not going to get into Thomas Tuchel's squad if he's not playing regularly. So he could potentially be a departure, maybe on loan.
Alan, does that surprise you? Because kind of this could be the chance to really sort of get it, you know, bedded down and get the extra players that they might just need in the January. I hear what Kaveh is saying. The players that they might want might not be available. But does that surprise you that they might not go in the window again?
Well, I don't think it surprises me. The one thing I'll say about Amorim, he seems to have settled the group a little bit in terms of the discipline, the noises coming out of the training ground seem to be more positive now. The results are improving. Some of the new transfers are making an impact. So they're on an upward, they're up the graph, so to speak. You wouldn't want to interfere with that. Sometimes a transfer can interfere with that balance. So I would suggest Amorim will be okay. I think he sees, and the expectation on him is not really Champions League football. I think it's just to have a really solid season. So if I was sitting where he's sitting, I would stick at the moment. But you know, the one thing about a window is that things do happen. Players come available that might interest Manchester United. So you never say never. But I think at this time, where he's got everything, and the criteria is looking good at the minute, let's stick.
Just picking up on something Kaveh said there about the players who won't be around for around 4 or 5 weeks. That's the likes of Bryan Mbeumo, Amad Diallo and Nusa Mazraoui. I know some United fans will think, well, they have to go into the market because these players are going, but they're only going for 4 to 5 weeks tops. So if they were to bring in players to replace those players going to the Africa Cup of Nations, when they return, what happens to the players that they brought? I think they're just going to take a step back, see who he's got in his squad to fill those gaps for that limited amount of time, because I don't think they want to do anything that would suggest panic, which has often been aimed at Manchester United in previous transfer windows. I think there's a more subtle approach to how they're doing transfers. They've been pretty pleased with what they've done during the summer transfer window. Perhaps not filled every single gap that they wanted to, particularly in midfield. But as Kaveh mentioned there, the kind of players that they're going to be after, they're going to be expensive. They're very unlikely to become available in January. And if they are, the premium on those players is going to go up. So I think United might just take a step back and say, we've got enough here at the moment. Let's see if we can get through without the players that have gone to the AFCON. And when they do come back, it will be like new signings coming back to the club anyway.
But, Alan, does that give Manchester United, particularly the players you mentioned, Amad, in fine form, and Bomo. Those are two key players for them right now. And potentially that could have, if they go far in AFCON, that's for a few weeks of those players not being there. That gives Manchester United's season a time to sort of reverse, surely.
Well, I was just about to say about the AFCON, it's not quite as simple as like them going away for 3 or 4 weeks and they'll come back as they left. You know, my experience of it, and I had a lot of experience at Newcastle with that tournament, is that players go away, okay, the training facilities are not as good, the actual coaching they're getting, the work, the sports science backup isn't there. They sometimes come back not quite right. And the impact of AFCON on Manchester United is probably bigger than most clubs because they're key players. So I don't think it would be a word called panic or anything, but I think it's something they need to monitor. I think they will definitely be monitoring the window to see if there is an opportunity arises, because sometimes it does. It lands for you perfectly. Those players missing are going to be really missed by Manchester United.
Yeah, go on.
I just wonder as well the knock-on effect it will have on the two players that Kaveh mentioned, Kobbie Mainoo and Joshua Zirkzee. They obviously want more first-team football, but with these players going to the AFCON, is Ruben Amorim going to think, actually, you are going to get minutes and I need you because our squad is a little bit light without them. I don't want to further lighten that squad by allowing you to leave on loan for the rest of the season.
And if they step up, then he's got the problem of integrating the players that left.
Well, Sesko isn't getting a game, and so Zirkzee must still be looking, where am I going to get a game? So I think he has a unique problem. Manu definitely is a problem child for Manchester United, because I think the fan base want him to play. I think when I look at players, when he comes on, he looks like he's loved by the players. I think they want him to play. I think he will get a game and an opportunity, and he needs to play, obviously, if he's going to feature in the World Cup.
And you mentioned Sesko. He's now picked up a knee injury, and they don't actually know how long that's going to keep him out of business as well.
Yeah.
In terms of what they did, do you feel this window, this summer window, did it make up for previous windows? Because they had been accused of getting it horribly wrong for however long. I mean, we could go back for potentially 3 years, I think, even further. So did this window make up for that, do you feel?
I don't think it did ever make up for it, because how far they'd fallen. You know, when you look at teams like Crystal Palace, Brighton, Brentford, Bournemouth, their transfer policies have hardly got anything wrong over the last 2, 3, 4 years. And Man United continually got it wrong. So, okay, this window has definitely been more of a success. They obviously had changed the model a little bit, went for Premier League kind of experience, in Mbeumo and Cunha in particular, two players who not only were performing in the Premier League, but performing to a very high level. This is the sort of players that Man United are traditionally bought under Alex Ferguson. So maybe they've just gone back to what they used to do and pay, the fees that need to be paid. I don't think that this window makes up for all the problems they've created previously, if I'm honest, but it has repaired some of the damage.
It'd be interesting to see what they achieve this season. You talked about the pressure being off him, and maybe not the Champions League. He doesn't need that for Amorim himself. Where do you think they might end up, though? Because at one stage, had they got the win the other week, they would have gone second in the table.
I think that, when I look at Manchester United, and I watched them closely against Spurs, they don't look like they've got the tools that they need to be a Champions League team this year. Amorim is lucky in the respect that he has time to work with a team with no European football, so that always gives you a massive advantage. I remember when I was at Newcastle, we had that advantage when we finished 5th over Chelsea and all the teams that were trying to get into that position. So it does give you a great advantage, and I'm sure he's grateful for that. But I think they're way short still of competing for the top 4 at the level we're at in the Premier League.
Okay. All right, let's turn our attentions to Arsenal, because they're 4 points clear at the top and appear to be benefiting from their recruitment in the previous windows. Dams, do you think they'll go again in January?
Look, it's not a window where Arsenal are usually that active. The last time I think that they signed major players for the first team squad was back in 2023. January 2023, Leandro Trossard came in. He's
not a bad signing.
Jorginho, you could say, was a success as well. Jakub Kiwior came in that window as well. He's since gone out on loan with the view to a permanent deal as well. So maybe that one didn't work as much as Arsenal would have wanted. So I'm not expecting Arsenal to be that busy in January unless one of two things were to happen. There's a major injury before then, which they did have last January when Gabriel Jesus injured his ACL, and he's only on his way back now. But I think all the Arsenal fans then were imploring the club to bring in a striker. And I think Arsenal were very well aware that they needed to bring someone in. But I think they wanted to keep their powder dry a little bit because they had longer term plans. And if they'd had signed someone like Ollie Watkins, who they went for, there was a big differential in the price between what Villa wanted and what Arsenal were prepared to pay, up to £20 million. And Arsenal weren't prepared to bridge that gap. So they said, let's not do it in this transfer window. We have got other longer term targets that we can exercise in the summer. So that's one reason if there's an injury, or if a long term target or a market opportunity that's far too good to turn down presents itself. And that in itself is a rarity in a January transfer window. And if you add on to that, Captain Martin Odegaard, Noni Madueke, Gabriel Jesus, Kai Havertz, Victor Gyökeres, Gabriel Martinelli, they're all currently out injured at the moment, and they are all expected to come back, well, the majority of them, once the international break is over, and towards the end of the year, you should see all of those players back. And for some of them who haven't played the entire season, it's almost acting like the old cliche, it's like a new signing. So the squad looks like it is built to challenge on all fronts this season, and it doesn't look like at the moment, can change of course, that they'll need to reinforce in January.
Terrifying for the rest of the league, you'd have to say. Let's talk about Andre Berta, because that was his first window, wasn't it? How do you feel that he's settled in then?
I mean,
big shoes to fill after
the general
Eddie, obviously.
consensus is it's been a success so far, because they had a massive transfer window in the summer, his first summer transfer window at the club. They're 4 points clear at the top of the Premier League. By and large, all of the signings that he's brought in have contributed. Now, he is the driving force behind the recruitment at the club, but it should also be said that back in 2020, Arsenal changed Mikel Arteta's title. And it was quite significant, actually, because he turned from a head coach to a manager. Now, Alan would probably be able to throw a bit more light on that and the differences that entails. But for Arteta to become a manager, he has a say in all the transfer activity. I'm not saying your head coach doesn't, but that subtle change in the title would imply that he would have a voice, and quite a big voice, when it comes to recruitment. Now, he's spoken publicly, has Mikel Arteta, about how the board, Andrea Berta and himself, have worked in unity together, especially in this last transfer window, because there was quite a lot of upheaval earlier on in the year when Edu left the club, and it came as a surprise to everyone at the football club. But then they managed to recruit someone like Andrea Berta, who's got a huge standing in European football, and it looks like everyone's working together in a way that Arsenal always wanted it to work. And the proof is where they are in the league and the signings that they've made. I just wanted to ask Alan, actually, on that point about manager and head coach, but also you've managed for so long that you've been in the era where there hasn't been sporting directors to an era where there have been sporting directors. You've even been a sporting director yourself. What were the differences before and after for you?
Well, of course, one of the problems you had when you're managing in the Premier League, and the bigger the league got, the more pressure there was on you in terms of performances. The squads were getting bigger, the finance was getting bigger, it was getting more and more difficult to keep your eye focused on transfers. And I think it was a natural progression that we were going to get a technical director, a transfer team, analysts that were going to go through all the videos and go through all the data. So now it's like a whole team of people that are in charge of transfers. But of course, whether you're head coach or manager, you still got a massive influence in that room. So when it comes to the transfer, ultimately Arteta will be saying yes.
So he got the ultimates then? So, or is it who's in charge?
Well,
of that
if
bit?
Arteta said no,
right,
for example, they would have a major problem, and they know that.
Okay.
They don't want to lose the manager. The manager's in a good mode. What you got to remember about the ownership of a football club, you've got to have unison with the manager. You've got to. right? And if you fall out or you start getting friction in that relationship, then you have got problems. And Nottingham Forest have had that issue with Nuno this year in particular, where Edu and the whole thing seemed to fall apart. So it is an important role, and it's when you're getting on and when you're winning and the transfers are all looking great, then everybody's happy. It's only when the errors come and the fingers start getting pointed where you put him up or...
But it sounds like then there, with Nuno, then the sporting director won.
Well, I don't know if he won. I wouldn't say he won.
But it was Nuno that ultimately left the club, wasn't it?
Nuno ended up at West Ham manager. So he won as well. He got Forest and he got a new club.
But you hear where I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, of
but
course.
It sounds like you said there was a...
I didn't say there was a problem between Nuno and Edu. I was saying there was a problem between the three of them. Because actually, that is an important relationship. One of his jobs as a technical director, he said to me, you know, that and I did that role, was my job was to protect the manager, mainly. That was how I felt, from the owner. The owner was a very emotional person, you know. Manager's got to go, you know, this is not right, and I'll be like, oh, it's okay, give him time.
Well done, Alan.
Yeah, well, of course. But that is a technical director's job. It is almost to try, in the calm light of day, like on a Tuesday after a Saturday game, to bring some realism to the result. To say, okay, well, the XG was great, you know, and we had great performances, okay, the result didn't go away, and calm the owner down. And so you get that. And if you get that relationship with the manager and the technical director working together and on transfers, then you got a winning mentality.
Just in your managerial career, particularly when you worked with a sporting director, was there ever a time you were saying if there's not unison, then there's a problem?
Yeah.
Was there ever a signing at any of your clubs that was made that you were saying, this is not a good idea, I don't want this player? And what was the end result?
Yeah, the end result is there was a few that got signed. And actually, one of the...
Are you going to name any?
Yeah, no. One, there's a funny story because Alan Carr, who's just won Traitors, who's brilliant, right?
We loved it,
Some people have got it on record.
Oh, sorry.
They haven't. It's too late for that.
His father was Graham Carr, the famous manager, of course, right? And he was my chief scout at Newcastle. And when I went, he was very powerful at Newcastle. And he had an opinion about a player that was very difficult to kind of budge. So he was like, yes, 100% we should have him. And I was like, oh, no. I don't think so. We should sign him. And I'm going to give you an example to sort of clarify how that went. So I was at Southampton previous to Newcastle, and I wanted to sign Adam Lallana for Newcastle. And I was quite adamant about it. I want Adam Lallana. Graham Carr was like, well, Adam Lallana is a great player for Southampton, but this is Newcastle. This is a step up. I don't think he's good enough. And I'm saying, well, I've actually coached him, and I'm coaching the players at Newcastle. So you have those kind of conversations. We didn't fall out over it, but you know, you'd be strong in that room. And the owner has to make a call. And in that particular instance, obviously we did not sign Adam Lallana, so he won. But that, well, I wouldn't say one, because I think that's a little bit unfair, but that is the kind of conversations that you have around the table, and that's natural.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
But when you get in unison and you're really kind of in tune with each other, the technical director and the manager, that is the perfect scenario. And of course, that still needs to happen between the technical director and the owner, and the manager and the owner.
And it feels like Arteta's really lucky because he had it with Edu.
It sounds like he's got a very good relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, what have you got for us?
Wow, Adam Lallana nearly at Newcastle. What a story that was. There was over £3 billion spent in what was a record-breaking summer transfer window. Next, we'll take a look at who's been a hit and who needs to start firing.
Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Let's get to one of today's news lines. Ivan Toney is attracting interest from a number of Premier League clubs. So will we see the striker back in the Premier League before too long? And that's the question. He's attracting a lot of interest, understandably, Mark.
Yeah, rightly so, because he's a goal scorer. He's 29 years old, he's scored goals in the Premier League, and he brings the type of profile of striker that most managers would like to have in their squad. 29 goal involvements in 30 league games last season. We know the Saudi Pro League is just in the start of their current campaign, and he's already in the goals as well. There are a number of Premier League clubs that are currently exploring the option, the possibility whether they can get a deal over the line for Ivan Toney, whether he would want to come back to the Premier League, and whether financially it could make sense. Of course, the reason why perhaps Ivan Toney is a talking point right now is because he's not in Thomas Tuchel's England squad. The last time he played for Thomas Tuchel and England was in June, and whilst he was in the Saudi Pro League, and Thomas Tuchel said, I'm not going to overlook Ivan Toney just because he's not playing in one of the big leagues in Europe or the Premier League. If he's doing the business, I'm still going to look at him. Right now, he's not in that England squad, so that's why there is this noise around Ivan Toney potentially coming back to the UK. It's definitely one to keep an eye on. I think finances will dictate what possibly could happen, because it would be a challenging one financially to make happen. But there are a number of Premier League sides that are saying, if we can make it work, we would love to have Ivan Toney.
Yeah, it's interesting. We ran a poll on our app asking which club would suit Toney the best. The results are in, as they say.
The results are in from the jury.
Yes.
And right now, actually, on the SkySports.com website, you can have your say. Manchester United is the team leading the way with 32% of the vote. People saying that's where Ivan Toney would fit in. That would be perfect for him. Second, Tottenham, 21%. The reason why that's interesting, of course, because a certain Thomas Frank, and hugely influential in developing him as a player, took him to Brentford whilst they were in the Championship, and then continued that form in the Premier League. So you could see that relationship working there. And just finally, Brentford, 3%, return to his old club.
Yeah, I mean, Everton as well, I think we're up there in there, because I did have a sneaky look myself. And I mean, Barry, Beto or Ivan Toney, I mean, I'm guessing that would be quite a nice conundrum for Mr. Moyes, wouldn't it?
Well, Ivan Toney, you know, not only is he an asset in terms of his credentials and everything else, but now the game is kind of developing into set plays and long throws. Can you imagine Ivan Toney, how influential he'd be on those? So, you know, he gives you a lot of dimension to your team. I think it'd be a great signing. I just think the accountant will have to do some work to get him over the line, because the tax issues and everything else involved in bringing a player from Saudi Arabia are very complicated and very costly. So I think it's unlikely. If I was to choose a home, I would say Tottenham would be his probably favourite. I think they're really short at the top of the pitch, and he could answer a few questions there.
How realistic is it, Calvé?
I think the tax implications are huge, because one of the reasons players move to Saudi Arabia with respect to the Saudi Pro League is the fact that you earn huge money there, and it's also tax-free. Now, if you were to come back to the UK before a certain period of time, then HMRC would want you to pay UK tax on the money that you earn in Saudi Arabia as well. So it could potentially cost somebody like Ivan Toney tens of millions of pounds if he was to return to play in the Premier League. So from a football perspective, I can understand it would be a really good move for him to come back to the Premier League. The World Cup is coming up. I thought when he played during the last Euros, he did really well, scored a fantastic no-look penalty as well. I can understand why he needs to be back in the Premier League to get back in the England squad, but is it worth paying that much tax? I mean...
Well, Alan, I mean, is it worth paying that much tax to get yourself in the World Cup squad and score a no-look penalty in the final?
Well, he's 29. I don't see him coming back for anything other than the situation he's gone out there for, which is obviously of financial reasons. Otherwise, he would have stayed in the Premier League. There was enough Premier League club interest, but obviously Saudi Arabia, the finance was such that he couldn't turn it down. So now to sort of say to him, oh, well, you're going to come back now and you're going to pay tax on all that money, no, I don't see that happening. So my gut feeling is he won't come back. But having said that, you know, this is, I just feel a little bit disappointed for him, because when Thomas, and we've heard this from English managers before, when players move abroad, well, it's okay, that won't affect me picking you, but he hasn't picked him. He's still scoring goals in Saudi Arabia. Why hasn't he picked him? I think he should travel to the World Cup, even if he stays in Saudi Arabia. Personally, I think he's a great addition to the playing staff that we have in that group.
What would he bring that perhaps others on the periphery of that role?
Well, the one thing I liked about him when he played for England, and the one thing I like about him as a player, he has no fear. You're talking about a player here who has cast iron confidence, and we talked about penalties maybe being a major issue in the World Cup finals, which they always are. Well, Ivan Toney would be a useful tool then, with 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go and replace a striker and also be penciled in to take a penalty. So it's his attitude and the technical ability that he brings as a centre forward that I think can't be ignored, and that's why when his name's put around in the media like it has today, but there are going to be interest. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I think out loud. What about if he just came on loan? Joined a Premier League club in January on loan to May, put himself in the shop window, goes to the World Cup, and then goes back to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, but what you got to respect Saudi Arabian league as well. And do you think they would want to do that? They're trying to build the structure of their league and make it a world league like the Premier League. So that wouldn't work for them, and I don't see them doing that.
Do you think he'd be a good signing for West Ham potentially? Could he fit into the way Nuno plays? I mean, he had Chris Wood at Forest. Could he do a similar sort of job, be the sort of focal point for their attack?
Let me call Nuno now and ask him. I actually know the answer without actually calling him. Absolutely, of course. And West Ham fans, wow, they're starved of any kind of success over the last sort of year. So, and they're in a terrible situation. They're right in it although the last 2 wins have been so important. 100% he would fit in at West Ham.
You can make a case for so many teams in the Premier League right now. You really could. Okay. All right, stay with us. Will we see teams in the relegation battle spend big in the January transfer window? On the way, we're going to discuss that, which includes Alan's old club. Sorry about this. West Ham, of course. Right, welcome back. Let's talk Chelsea now. They made more than they spent in the summer. So will they continue to spend in January? And that's the question to you, Carve. What do you think their strategy will be?
Well, I think Chelsea are working really hard on signings, but not for January. They're focusing on preparing, signings for the summer of next year and also the summer of 2027. I know some Chelsea fans want the club to sign a new goalkeeper. That's not going to happen in January. Some Chelsea fans want them to sign another centre-back. That's not going to happen in January. Some fans want them to sign another defensive midfielder because Romeo Lavia is injured a lot of the time. Dario Isugo, who came in this summer, is out injured as well. A lot has been asked of Moises Caicedo, but Chelsea are not going to be signing a defensive midfielder this January either. I think a club the size of Chelsea, their business is really focused on summer windows. So I would expect it to be pretty quiet, but I think they're going to have a big summer next summer and also summer 2027.
You mentioned Moises Caicedo. There's a case for him to be arguably the best midfielder in the world right now. I mean, he's just, I don't want to say it's a one-man team because it certainly isn't, but he's really starting for Chelsea right now, isn't he?
Well, I was there Friday and, he's such a kind of clever player in that he covers the ground, covers the picture. There's a picture forming and he kind of gets himself in the middle of it so that whatever you're trying to create as the opposing team, he kind of snuffs it out. So that's his art. He's efficient with the ball. His relationship with Hernandez, obviously a World Cup winner, is terrific. I think, Chelsea are very, very strong in that particular area. I don't see them strengthening or looking to strengthen there. And the one beauty of Caicedo is that he's always available. He's hardly ever not playing. So that's a great benefit to a team to have a player who's always there. I remember at Crystal Palace, Will Zaha was never injured. He's always getting fouled and brought down, but he's always available, And the importance of that, not just for the team, but for results, is massive. So he's been an unbelievably great signing for Chelsea and very much in the top kind of that pivot player, that number 6, the top 3-4 in the world for sure.
We do have an update on him actually this evening. There's been talk that he may be getting a new Chelsea contract to reward him for his performances. My understanding of the situation is that his contract already, basically Chelsea, I think, have him tied down until 2033. So they're not going to be. They're not.
Quite the distance, isn't it?
There's nothing wrong with 8-year contracts.
Exactly. I don't know why.
Is that what you're on here?
Why are you going on?
He got one at.
I remember.
That sounds short to me.
7 years, wasn't it?
You're still getting paid by
8 years.
Newcastle.
Yeah.
Has that run out now? The Newcastle.
It's still going. No, it's ongoing.
No, but seriously, just go back to Moses Caicedo. He won't, I think, be getting a new Chelsea contract because he's contracted until 2033. But I think what is going to happen behind the scenes in private is that the terms of his present deal are going to be improved. I think.
But that's a new contract then.
It's not a new contract.
It's not
improved
extra length.
contract, isn't it? Yeah.
I think it'll be a pay rise.
It's an improved contract.
But it won't be. He won't be actually signing a new deal with new terms. It will just be
extra money in the bank account.
Yeah, we're going to recognise the fact that you've been playing so well. So we're going to give you a pay rise.
Isn't that the right way to do it?
And we're not going to announce it. It's not going to be done in
I
public.
don't think
It's
that's
something
possible.
that'll be done privately.
I don't think that's possible. I think the length of the contract can not change. That's okay. But I think the improved terms.
But Chelsea do have these. They do have these contracts that are sort of heavily incentivised. So the players are actually on relatively low base wages compared to other clubs the size of Chelsea. But if you play well and you perform, then you're rewarded. And I think Chelsea's position is that, of course, he's playing fantastically well, and we've got a great relationship with him and his representatives. So, of course, we're going to reward him, but we don't want to have the whole song and dance of announcing that we're going to be giving him a new contract.
It might have been in his contract originally that if you
But Palmer signed a new
do
deal,
these
right?
poor performances, yeah.
Palmer signed a new deal.
But it's not
on the back of a long contract. But the point being that I think the Chelsea model makes sense to me because they're signing a lot of young players, and if you are successful, then we will renegotiate. And I think that's probably the message sent to the training ground. If you want to play like Caicedo, you want to play like Palmer, then you'll get rewarded.
Just on Caicedo very quickly, has it been even more impressive that we're not talking about his transfer fee at all anymore? It seems to be the same case with Declan Rice as well. These two players have performed so well, and yet there was so much talk about £100 million plus that they paid for these players at the time, and we don't hear anything about their transfer fees anymore. If anything, would it be fair to say that both of those players, even though they cost 105 and 115 million pounds respectively, they have actually increased their transfer value now?
Well, possibly, but it just goes to show you the importance of that pivot role in modern football. It is so important, and Rodri, obviously a Ballon d'Or holder at the moment, is because it releases fullbacks. It can release a centre back if that player is good enough to sit and do that job, plus be able to pass, be able to read the game. And that's why the value of those guys is so important and so much.
Interesting to see what's going to happen with Axel Disasi, because obviously he's been training away from the team, hasn't he? So do you think he'll move in January? What's happening there, Calvé?
You know what? I think there's a way back for Axel Disasi now. He was a member of this infamous Chelsea bomb squad last summer, training away from the first team squad. He's been training on his own or training with Raheem Sterling this season. But then on Saturday, he actually captained the Chelsea under-21 side. I think they were playing against Reading. And our information this evening is that he's likely to return to training with the Chelsea first team squad as well. And I think between now and January, he may also play again for the first team. Now, does that mean that he's got a long-term future at Chelsea? I don't think so. I still think it's likely that he's going to leave in January. I think the reason he's going to return to the first team is not because he's got a future necessarily at Chelsea. It's more to get him playing and also to put him in the shop window as well. But obviously behind the scenes, he's been doing something that's impressed Chelsea, because not only did he play for the under-21s, but he captained them, and now we're led to believe that he'll be back in the first team picture as well.
Alan, how usual or unusual is this system that Chelsea seem to have? But I think it does happen at other clubs as well, that players kind of get removed from the core training and they train on their own, and then potentially they come back or they do something else? How
well,
often is that?
I've actually taken that group when I was at Reading, and Tommy Burns was the manager. There's 4 or 5 players he wanted them to leave the football club, and it is a way of kind of forcing players to look at their futures rather than just plod along, come in and training, think they're going to get a game, not going to get a game. No, you are not involved. So it's a tool for a manager. It's a tool I never used myself. I didn't like it. And it also causes damage to the squad, because players can look at that situation and think, no, well, that could be me in a different situation, and I would never want that. So the club shouldn't be doing that. That is mostly their personal opinion. So it's not something that's liked in the dressing room. Very difficult for the players who are in that position, of course. But sometimes these messages are from above. We want this player to move on for whatever reason, and this is the actions we want you to take. So you get under a lot of pressure as a manager to do that kind of thing. I don't know about this current situation, but actually him coming back to the group makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm sure in the dressing room that will be really well received by the other players.
Yeah, and it would be a mark of I say boy, I mean, this is so young, but a mark of the man if he comes back and actually does really well in the team,
Yeah,
isn't
sure.
it? Yeah, okay. All right, stay with us. We've got plenty more coming your way. Liverpool spent big, didn't they, in the summer, but they've already lost more games in the Premier League than they did last season. We'll assess how their summer signings have performed next.
Welcome back to the final part of the transfer show. It was a record-breaking summer window with over £3 billion spent by Premier League clubs. But have some of the biggest signings lived up to their transfer fees? I said at the beginning of the show I was going to put Alan Pardew under pressure. Get your thinking cap on. These are the top 8 most expensive signings of the summer in the Premier League, starting with Alexander Isak there in the top corner, right the way down to Victor Gyökeres at Arsenal. Let's start with Alexander Isak then, because let's be honest, it hasn't worked out so far. Just the 1 goal in the League Cup, no Premier League goals. But do you expect him to come good?
Yes, I do, but the goals he scored at Newcastle are not the sort of goals that Liverpool create. With fast crosses coming in from both sides, 2 good wingers going on the outside, getting crosses in which he was finishing off. So I think his tally might come down a little bit, but I still think he'll be a success.
We obviously can see the Liverpool dominate the top 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one player that definitely has worked in these early stages, Hugo Ekitike.
Yes, he's looked, sharp and lively. He wasn't so great against Manchester City, but in all, he's started well and looks like he's got a lot of tools in his armoury.
We know we're 11 games in to the Premier League, so of course judging these players after 11 games is almost a little bit unfair. But
it's very unfair. But we'll have a go.
Such is the world of football these days. When you were signing players, did you know the ones that would hit the ground running and those that may just take a little bit of time to bed in and get used to the language and the team and the changing room?
Well, when you look at Wirtz, for example, who looks really out of sorts at the moment and hasn't found his confidence, and yet I'm told on the training ground he's still very buzzy, very sharp, etc. It seems like he needs a bit more time, and that can happen. Yohan Cabaye took a while to adjust for me, coming out of French league to the Premier League. It's so much more intense. So yes, some do take time, but some come straight into your training ground and change it straight away. And that's a brilliant thing.
Let's take a look at the next run. One player that took a little while, Carlos Tevez, didn't score for his first 19 games and then scored crucial goals. This is 9-16 now. You look at João Pedro, he's had an impact at Chelsea, done really well, 7 goals and assists in the Premier League. You look at someone like Antti Elanga, again, not quite hit the ground running. Wissa injured. But when you look at these are the top 16 players with regards to transfer fees. There's not many players you're looking at going, he's a definite hit. And I guess that's the problem with recruitment, that you're gambling a lot of money and almost praying and hoping that they hit the ground running.
Yeah, and of course, you know, these figures have been inflated by the new TV deal, okay? So this money is now more, but actually what have you got in the changing room already? They've still got to get past those players, and a lot of these players, in particular this player, has got a lot of players in front of him. So he's got to do a lot to actually break in the team. Not only find a footing at the club, get used to the training ground, new manager, new kind of information. He's got to get past some very, very good players. Elanga the same, West are the same at Newcastle.
And that was the top 16 biggest signings of the summer in the Premier League. Let's take a look at some of the big signings for those respective clubs. So for Everton, Forest, Fulham, Bournemouth, Brighton, these were their record signings this particular summer. But again, you'd look at these 5 players and say, they've not hit the ground running. So again, it goes back to that point where fans are desperately saying, go and spend money, get the checkbook out, back the manager, go and bring in new faces. Sometimes actually just sitting tight might be the right thing to do.
Well, you always need new faces, and sometimes these players who've not featured might have made a massive impact at the training ground by just pushing, because that's how you improve a football team. You have to push from underneath, and it's only that competition that you can actually take the team forward. That's why managers always want new players, of course, and new faces. So these guys might have played an important role at the training ground, but not so much on the pitch yet. But you'd expect them all to, you know, come through at some stage. These figures that they're on their names are there for a reason, because their stats or their performances elsewhere have been that good. So there is potential, not seen maybe yet.
Patience is the key.
The key.
Thanks very much indeed. Good to put you on the spot there. Florian Wirtz has been the subject of much discussion since his big money move to Liverpool. We'll discuss him in more detail in just a moment. But first, here are the thoughts of Gary Neville after his performance against Manchester City on Sunday.
Wirtz is a problem. Let's be clear. Let's just call it as it is. It's an issue. You know, he's 120 million quid, and he's, to be fair, I said a few weeks ago about Kirkes that he looks like a little boy out there. Today I thought Wirtz looked like a little boy, and that can't be the case. You know, he's a German international of great standing, and he looks well short in respect of what you'd expect in a top physical Premier League match. So they've got to get him up to speed. They've got to get that sort of little bit of tenacity into him, and that little bit of something that means that he'll start to get into form, because what they have to do is stick with him and persist, but they've got to find a way to get the best out of him.
Yeah, so Gary Neville says they've got to find the way to get the best out of him. Arguably, he paid on the wing, didn't he, against Real Madrid, and that was arguably his best performance so far this season. Do you think they are going to be concerned about this, or are they going to be, OK, look, hang on, as you mentioned, it's only 11 games in, let's not panic just yet?
No, they're concerned about it, make no mistake about that, because his impact has really been insignificant at the moment. Just going to Gary Neville's point there, he was never going to be able to play well in that game, because Liverpool weren't doing the fundamentals of the game. They didn't know second balls, weren't up for the pace of the game, and got well beat. So for a flair player to actually excel in that situation, it was never going to happen. So I felt for him in that particular game. There have been other games, though, where Liverpool dominated, and he still hasn't really come to the fore. At Leverkusen, when he played on the side, he played on the left side of a 3 and would drift in, and he would find pockets of space. I'm under the understanding that the reason he went to Liverpool was because they said you play number 10, and where he's now ending up is in the middle of an overload, where all the Premier Leagues overload the centre of the pitch, because it's an area that you can't give up. So he's having a problem to adjust to a new role-ish, because he didn't play a lot for Leverkusen there, and also in a league that is so much more kind of energy-based, that he's finding it difficult to find a footing. My understanding is, from the people that you only need to see who work with him, this is a proper talent and he'll come through.
Hopefully he will. You've been brilliant. You're a proper talent for us. Thank you tonight. Thanks, Darmstadt. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.
We'll be back next.
Arsenal are reportedly in advanced negotiations to secure a key figure from Napoli, a move that could significantly strengthen Mikel Arteta's long-term project and reshape the club's recruitment strategy. Currently sitting at the top of the Premier League table, Arsenal are not slowing down. According to reports, the club is working behind the scenes to reinforce not just the squad, but also its recruitment department, in a bid to maintain their competitive edge. Sources suggest that Arsenal are close to bringing in one of Serie A's most respected scouting specialists, a move that underlines their commitment to building sustainable success both on and off the pitch. The Gunners enjoyed a busy summer transfer window, bringing in 8 new signings to bolster their title push. Mikel Arteta welcomed the arrivals of Martin Zubimendi, Christian Mosquera, Victor Gyökeres, Noni Madueke, Ebereki Eze, Piero Hincapié, Christian Norgard, and Kepa Arrizabalaga, all part of a coordinated effort led by sporting director Andrea Berta, who joined the club earlier this year following his departure from Atletico Madrid. Now, with the January transfer window approaching, Arsenal appear ready to take another ambitious step. According to a report from BBC Sport, the club is holding advanced talks with Maurizio Micheli, the current head scout of Serie A champions Napoli. Micheli, 57, is said to be considering a new challenge in North London after playing a major role in Napoli's recent success. Micheli's reputation in Italy is outstanding. Over 2 separate spells with Napoli, first joining in 2010, then returning in 2018, he has been credited with discovering some of the club's most influential stars, including Kvichik Kvaratskhelia, Kim Min-jae, and Marek Hamsik. His sharp eye for talent and ability to spot emerging players before they break out have made him one of the most respected scouts in European football. If the deal goes through, it would represent a quiet but powerful statement from Arsenal, one that reinforces the club's evolution from a team rebuilding its identity to an organization setting new standards in recruitment, analysis, and player development under Arteta's leadership. If Arsenal finalize the deal to bring Maurizio Micheli to North London, the move could mark a quiet turning point in the club's long-term football structure. Those within the club view this not merely as a backroom appointment, but as an investment in sustainable squad building and global scouting reach. Micheli's methods, deeply analytical and heavily reliant on both live observation and data-driven evaluation, are said to align perfectly with Arsenal's evolving recruitment philosophy under Mikel Arteta and sporting director Andrea Berta. Several Italian outlets have reported that Micheli has already begun informal conversations with Arsenal's technical team regarding potential scouting reforms and how his approach could integrate with the club's growing analytics department. One insider described his philosophy as a blend of intuition and intelligence, noting that Micheli often spots undervalued talent in smaller European leagues before their market value spikes. That talent for anticipation is something Arsenal have been missing since the early days of Arsène Wenger's reign. In Italy, the news of Micheli's potential departure from Napoli has raised eyebrows. He has been one of the quiet architects behind Napoli's modern success, overseeing the recruitment that led to their Serie A title and several high-value player sales. His exit would represent a major loss for the Italian champions, whose recruitment network he helped build almost from the ground up. Some Napoli insiders reportedly fear a short-term void in their scouting structure, particularly with the club preparing for another challenging Champions League campaign. From Arsenal's perspective, however, Micheli's experience could prove invaluable. His arrival would further strengthen the synergy between Arteta's tactical demands and the club's recruitment operations, ensuring that signings not only fit the team's technical requirements but also its cultural and psychological identity. Arsenal's recent focus on mental resilience and adaptability mirrors Micheli's own emphasis on attitude and character when evaluating potential players. Analysts across Europe have already begun to speculate on what Micheli's involvement could mean for Arsenal's transfer strategy in 2025. With the Gunners now established as title contenders again, there's an expectation that Micheli's network, particularly in Italy, Eastern Europe and South America, could open doors to emerging talent markets where Arsenal have been less active in recent years. His appointment could also allow the club to identify future stars earlier, avoiding the inflated fees that come with late pursuits of proven players. In essence, Arsenal's pursuit of Maurizio Micheli is not about short-term gain. It's a statement of intent, a commitment to intelligent planning, early identification of elite talent, and a belief that the smallest details behind the scenes can determine success on the pitch. If completed, this move could quietly become one of the most influential signings of Arsenal's modern era. Penalty miss, Ballard's costly error, and Brobby's high boot, breaking down the controversial moments from Sunderland versus Arsenal. Football London takes a closer look at the key refereeing decisions that shaped Arsenal's 2-2 draw with Sunderland, including a missed penalty call, a disputed Daniel Ballard goal, and the dramatic late equalizer that left the Gunners frustrated. For the first time since their draw with Manchester City, Arsenal dropped points, held to a tense stalemate at the Stadium of Light. Mikel Arteta's side faced one of their toughest and most organized opponents of the season and looked on course for victory, until Brian Brobby's stoppage time strike silenced the travelling fans. It wasn't just the result that stung. Several refereeing controversies added fuel to the frustration. After falling behind early, Arsenal saw 2 questionable calls go against them, both of which could have swung the game in their favor. Referee Craig Pawson once again found himself at the center of the post-match debate. Below, Football.London reviews the major incidents from the match. 1. The missed penalty on Mikel Merino. Early in the first half, a dangerous cross from Leandro Trossard caused chaos in Sunderland's box. As Mikel Merino went up to challenge for the ball against former Arsenal defender Daniel Ballard, the Sunderland player raised his left arm and caught Merino hard in the head before heading the ball away. The Spanish midfielder collapsed to the turf and required lengthy medical attention, forcing multiple stoppages in play. Analysis. If that type of contact had happened anywhere outside the box, it would almost certainly have been called a foul. Ballard made clear, forceful contact with Merino's face before winning the header. Similar incidents, like Victor Gyökeres's denied penalty against Newcastle when Nick Pope touched the ball first, have been ruled inconsistently. In this case, the contact was obvious, and if the referee didn't see it, VAR should have intervened for a clear and obvious error. Verdict: incorrect decision. Penalty should have been awarded to Arsenal. 2. Zubimendi's yellow card and the questionable free kick. In a moment of irony, this play began with what looked like a missed foul at the other end. Granit Xhaka appeared to clip Eberechi from behind on the edge of Sunderland's box without playing the ball. Seconds later, Sunderland broke forward, and as Martin Zubimendi stretched to intercept, the referee blew for a foul and booked him for stopping a counterattack. Sunderland scored from the ensuing free kick, a sequence that changed the game's rhythm entirely. Analysis. Replays showed Zubimendi clearly got a firm touch on the ball before any contact with the attacker. If a foul had been called, a yellow card would have been fair under the stopping a promising attack rule, but in this case, it was simply the wrong call. The official also appeared to miss the earlier foul by Xhaka on ease, another moment that influenced the play's development. Verdict: incorrect decision. No foul should have been given. 3. Brobby's high boot and the late equalizer. Just when Arsenal looked set to secure all 3 points, the Gunners were undone in stoppage time. In the 94th minute, Brian Brobby found the net after a chaotic sequence inside the box, drawing Sunderland level and sending the home crowd into celebration. Brobby appeared to lift his foot dangerously high during the challenge with Gabriel, who went down holding his face immediately after the goal. Despite brief appeals, the referee allowed play to continue, and VAR confirmed the goal. Analysis. On review, there was some mutual contact. Gabriel tugged Brobby's shirt noticeably in the build-up, while goalkeeper David Raya misjudged the flight of the ball and failed to clear it effectively. Though Brobby's leg was high, the challenge didn't appear reckless enough to warrant a foul, and Arsenal's defensive errors did most of the damage. Verdict: goal stands. Not enough evidence for a foul. Final takeaway. Arsenal will feel hard done by, with at least 2 critical calls going against them in a tightly contested match. For Mikel Arteta's team, it was a reminder that fine margins and officiating inconsistencies can change the course of a game, and perhaps over a long season, even the trajectory of a title challenge. For Sunderland, it was a night of grit and resilience, and for Craig Pawson, another performance under the microscope. In the aftermath of the 2-2 draw, the debate over Craig Pawson's performance and the use of VAR dominated both media coverage and post-match interviews. Arsenal's frustration was palpable, not only because of the lost points but because the team felt they had done enough to win, only to be undone by what they saw as inconsistent officiating. Mikel Arteta, who has been vocal in the past about refereeing standards, remained measured in his comments but couldn't hide his disappointment. He acknowledged his team's defensive lapses late in the game but also alluded to the small details that went against them. Those close to the manager described him as visibly frustrated in the dressing room, emphasizing that such decisions can change the momentum of an entire season. Behind the scenes, Arsenal staff reviewed the match footage extensively, pointing to specific incidents that they believe should have been handled differently by both the referee and the VAR officials. Club sources indicated that the Gunners plan to raise the matter formally with the Premier League's refereeing body, PGMOL, not in protest of the result but to seek clarity and consistency in future decisions. Analysts and pundits were quick to weigh in as well. Former players on post-match broadcasts noted that the lack of VAR intervention in the Merino incident was difficult to justify, given how clearly the Sunderland defender's arm made contact. Others pointed out that Zubimendi's yellow card, which led to the free kick and subsequent goal, was a turning point that unfairly tilted the game's balance. Meanwhile, Sunderland's perspective was understandably different. Manager Toney Mowbray praised his team's resilience and fighting spirit, highlighting how they continued to push until the final whistle. "We showed character," he said. "We went toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the league and earned it." The draw, however, sparked wider discussion across English football about officiating consistency, especially in matches involving top sides. Former referees appeared on sports networks to analyze Pawson's decisions frame by frame, with most agreeing that while none of the calls were egregious, the cumulative effect painted a troubling picture of indecision and inconsistency. For Arsenal, the result meant more than just 2 dropped points. It was a psychological blow in a title race where every margin counts. The late goal from Brobby not only denied them victory, but also exposed defensive vulnerabilities that Arteta will be eager to address ahead of their upcoming fixtures. In the broader context, the match served as another reminder of how officiating remains one of the Premier League's most polarizing topics. Whether it's a missed penalty, an overlooked foul, or a subjective interpretation of clear and obvious error, moments like these continue to influence outcomes at the highest level. As the league moves deeper into the season, both Arsenal and the officials involved will feel the weight of this result. One as a setback in their campaign for consistency in silverware, the other as a fresh entry in an ongoing debate about accountability in modern refereeing.